She's Jazz.
And he's Josh.
And you've just tuned into the conversation.
In light of this month's NABJ convention, the theme of this month's show will be the National Association of Black Journalists. Josh, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, about a year ago, I did an interview with the VP of Fox 13 News, WHBQ here in Memphis, and we talked about diversity in the newsroom, how things have changed from when Ken Jobe, who is the VP, started to today, and how we can progress. So, in light of this week's NABJ convention, this month's, since they're having it this month,
right.
Our theme this month is diversity in the newsroom and NABJ. So, take a look at this. How was your experience coming up in the newsroom? I know that your first job was at WCPO in Cincinnati as an executive producer. So, you've been behind the scenes the majority, if not all, your entire career.
Well, actually, that was my first management job.
Okay.
I've been in television news now for almost 30 years. I started in Nashville, and I pretty much did everything they asked me to do. I was a reporter, and I shot my own stuff, and I wrote scripts, and I edited tape, and almost everything that there is to do in a newsroom I did a little bit of. And eventually settled on the producing track. I produced in Nashville for about 6 or 7 years, and then I went to New York and produced at WCBS, and then I went to CPO as executive producer. So I started, pretty much as a paid intern, essentially. I worked 2 days a week. I worked Sunday from like 8 in the morning to 10:30, 11 at night. And I'd get in, make beat calls, and I wouldn't leave until I had edited things for the morning newscast the next day. So I pretty much did it all coming up.
Okay. So do you feel that coming up, do you feel that race was ever a factor in you obtaining any of those jobs, or was it purely on qualification?
Certainly no one is going to give a job to someone who isn't qualified. That's just not going to happen. There aren't enough of us. If they do, I think they're making a very big mistake. But it would be, some of the contacts that I made through companies that had reached out to try to diversify their staff through the National Association of Black Journalists. When I left Nashville, it was after a meeting I had with a news director at the conference in St. Louis, and then I went to New York. Had CBS at that time not had a sincere effort to want to diversify, to send people to the conference and to the job fair, chances are I probably would not have gotten that job just sending a tape in and letting it sit on a stack with other tapes. Certainly I would say it's been a factor, but I think you have to be qualified as well.
Okay. Since you say you've been in the news business for 30 years, looking back, has the presence of minorities changed in the newsroom? And has it changed for the worse? Has it changed for the better? Are we on a decline? Are we on are we getting better?
Well, I think there is no question. Let me start at the beginning if I can.
Okay.
I think at first, in the very beginning, there was a lot of effort by some newsrooms to diversify because they felt like they had to, based on the Kerner Commission ruling and other things, that they sort of felt like, oh my goodness, we better get some people in here. And they did, in fact, probably take some people that probably should not have been in a newsroom, that didn't have the training, that weren't as prepared as some of their other peers. I think you don't see that happening today. I think the people that come in the business today are just as qualified as everybody. But are the numbers declining? Sure, the numbers are declining. And they're declining probably for a couple of reasons. Number one, there are fewer jobs, period. There aren't that many news operations now that have as many people as they had 5 years ago. Certainly not any of the local stations, certainly not any of the networks. because we've seen them all have layoffs over the last 5 years, and that hurts the raw numbers. Period. I also think sometimes because of this is a job that starts out with low pay and long hours, and there are other jobs out there that bright people can go and get where they perhaps do not have to put in 12 hours a day and can start at a higher rate. Certainly those businesses are attracting some of the best and brightest, I believe. But I do think that it's still, there are still a lot of good jobs out there that minorities can have, but clearly the numbers are dropping.
And so you feel that they're dropping in part because of the recession and layoffs. But in part, do you also feel that the change in the way technology is changing the business, is that hindering minorities or is that helping minorities? Do you find that more minorities know how to handle social media and the changing technology, or is that hurting us in our pursuit of these jobs?
That's an interesting question. I certainly think that the change in the technology makes the situation with the recession easier for stations to downsize. I mean, if you have 200 people in a company and the technology changes where you can have somebody with a very little camera doing an interview instead of one of the big professional cameras and carrying around the tape deck, and all of a sudden one person literally can do what 3 people used to do, and you're in a recession, then the technology will play a role in that downsizing. But that being said, even with the smaller numbers, I think now to find African Americans who aren't adept at the new technology and social media, or to find people that may be getting phased out because of their years of experience, certainly not coming in. There are no college students coming into this business that don't know how to use social media and don't know how to use any of the technology that's out there.
Okay. So it's the old guard that doesn't want to get rid of the old ways.
Right. And in a way, that's a shame. Okay. Because those are the guys, generally speaking, in most of these communities and in most of these areas that have the most experience and have the most contacts and know the most. But clearly, and clearly you see some stations hanging on, but I know for a fact that there are stations that have let some of the older reporters go, or told them they have to learn how to use it. And they choose not to and choose to do something else, and that's unfortunate.
Okay. Let's see here. Should minorities be? I've been told that there's always more power behind the scenes, and in order to get your stories told in front, you have to be working behind. So should minorities really be going for the behind the scenes jobs in order to get stories that they want told, out there, or should they, if they really want to go for in front of the camera, should they go for in front of the camera?
Well, that's a motivation question. That's a question that you have to ask yourself about why you want to be in this business. I mean, clearly, if you want to tell stories that impact your community, that mean something about your community, that shine lights on problems in your community, or uplift things in the community that people may not know about, clearly behind the camera is what you should think about doing, and that's where you should really think about going. The problem is, while a lot of people would like to do that, they also want to make the money. And it's on camera, which is where the big money is. It's, in a way, it's almost like professional athletics. The coach runs the team, and the coach sets the plays, and the coach tells you what to do, but it's the athletes that make the money. And at the end of the day, if it's the star athlete or the coach, 9 times out of 10, it's the star athlete that's going to be kept. So, I mean, to say that people shouldn't try to people shouldn't go in front of the camera and try to make as much money as they can. I can't say that, but I can say if their motivation is what you just asked me about, then they should think about going behind the scenes.
Let's see. Knowing what you know now, have you always wanted to be behind the scenes, or did you want to be in front? Or knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently?
I didn't want to be behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be in front of the camera, and I was for a period. But I had some things happen that sort of changed my life, and it goes to that motivation that you talk about. I had to ask myself, what is it that I want to do in terms of contributing something to this business? When I grew up in Nashville, Nashville has Meharry Medical College in it. Mm-hmm. And Meharry Medical College graduated in 1 year more black doctors at that point than all the other white institutions combined in their graduating class. And yet, when you watched our air, the only time you would see a black doctor on our air was if it was a story about sickle cell, or hypertension, or something that was uniquely black. Mm-hmm. We didn't ask them about circulation or respiratory problems or head injuries or foot problems. Mm-hmm. We only went out there if it was something that was affecting black folk.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that I noticed, that I said to myself, you know, there are plenty of black doctors in this town that graduated from Meharry, and if somebody doesn't make these reporters go interview them, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And you're going to get a distorted view of what it's really like. Because there are black doctors out there who are foot doctors. Right. And there are black doctors out there who are cardiologists.
Right. And then if the community isn't familiar with them, then that hinders the black doctors.
Right. So. And it perpetuates the stereotype. So, I mean, at some point I had to make a decision. Was I in it to for the money, or was I in it to try to help the community?
Now I want to talk to you about your opinion, 'cause on the national newscast. Why do you think there are not black anchors, or a real nightly black presence in primetime news? Is it because the newsroom isn't ready for it? Is it because America isn't ready for it? Or is it all based on polls and numbers? And
I don't know that I would say America isn't ready for it. I certainly think should the right person be there, I certainly think America would follow them. There was a point during the Today Show's existence, when Bryant Gumbel was its anchor, that it was the #1 morning show in America. I don't think you could say, I mean, the people, if there is anywhere that people are probably going to have long-standing prejudices, is first thing in the morning. And for him to do that successfully, I think would say that this country is ready for it. I don't know that the people that are running the networks are ready for it, but certainly I think the country could get behind the right person. But also, part of the problem is going to be some of that time has passed too. I mean, I don't know that many people that they are ready for, black or white. The network newses are fading. ABC has a real problem on their CBS has a real problem on their hands with their flagship nightly newscast, in that they're all hemorrhaging viewers. If you look at the news magazines, for argument's sake, there are fewer of those now than there once was. 60 Minutes is about the last one. And it only has about 6 correspondents, one of which is African American, but they only have about 6 correspondents. So, in terms of the network presence, I don't know if there's a lot of places for anybody, white or black or Latino, to go anymore these days, unless you want to get into the 24-hour cable networks, I guess.
Is there something? Is it in hiring minorities? Is there something that? Is it the fact that they are minorities that kind of makes them appealing? Because obviously they have to have the qualifications.
Right.
So would it be the fact that they are minorities and you're trying to diversify the newsroom that would make hiring a minority more appealing?
I have 2 executive producers. Both of them are African American females. In my mind, they're 2 of the best executive producers in this country. And they happen to be African American females. I think it is important to have a diverse set of voices in your newsrooms making decisions. Now, not everyone may feel that way, but I do think it's important. Now, does that mean, I'm not quite sure how to answer the question exactly, but I do think if what you are trying to do in your news department is reflect the community, then you need to have a team that looks like where you live.
Okay.
Now, does that mean an African American is more is a better candidate than somebody else? Well, it depends on what the rest of the team looks like. If the whole team is one thing,
right?
Whatever that is, it would make some sense to diversify that team.
Okay. Mentally prepare the aspiring young journalists. What are some obstacles that you think every journalist and every minority journalist kind of has to face?
That this is a lot of work. When you are not in the building, you really still need to be working. You need to be developing contacts. You need to read. You need to study. You need to know about issues. You never know what you're going to be covering one day to the next. So you need to be very, very, very well informed, which means you can't walk out at the time that your shift ends and not check out a newspaper either online or in your hands, or not read research, or not watch the news, or not you can't divorce yourself from it if you're going to be successful. It is a 24-hour news cycle. The hours, particularly coming in the beginning, are not great. A lot of our young producers start on our morning newscast, which is essentially working overnights. I've worked out in the beginning of my career. I worked overnights, weekends, nights. I worked it all. I used to volunteer for extra days, and it's not at least not in the beginning, and for the vast majority of us, not even years and years and years and years and in. This isn't a business that makes you rich. You can be comfortable, but there aren't a lot of, unless they're at the network level, rich journalists out there.
Right.
So I think it's something, at the end of the day, it's something that you have to have a calling for. You have to have a passion for it. I would say that if this is something that you're looking at and you're sort of saying, maybe I'll do this, or maybe I'll do this, and you probably don't want to do this, because you're probably not going to have a passion for it. It's got to be something that you want to do, for whatever reason that may be. Maybe that reason is, you want, there are stories in your community that aren't being told, and you want to be the one to tell them. Maybe that reason is you just want to get your face on TV. But whatever that reason is, you better be passionate about it. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it.
Is there a defining moment for you? Is there a defining obstacle that you felt that you had to overcome in order that without it you wouldn't be sitting where you are today?
That's a good question. I don't know that I had one defining moment. I think if I had to choose one, it would probably be going to New York. Which in some ways, in my eyes, justly or unjustly, I can only speak for myself, that was the #1 market. That was that's where all the networks are, and to be able to go there and survive and make it certainly gave me the confidence
to tackle anything,
to go anywhere I wanted to go after that. I'm not saying that my path is the path that everyone should take. I think some of the guys that have stayed in one market for years and years and years and built up contacts and just can break stories there, I completely admire. I'm not saying my path is the path to take, but if you ask me to define the moment that worked for me, it's probably knowing that I could make it at CBS in New York.
And lastly, what is your overall advice? I want you to talk to NABJ members. Your overall advice for a journalist trying to get into this field.
My overall advice is to be knowledgeable and passionate.
Okay.
Have a passion for knowledge, and want to impart that knowledge, and and don't stop and don't take no for an answer if this is truly what you want to do. If you get knocked down once, get back up, and if you get knocked down again, get back up again, and know that what you're doing is the right thing, and just stand by it.
Okay.
Well, Josh, that conversation was very informative to the members of NABJ as well as the future of NABJ.
Thank you very much.
So you guys just tune in next time to see what's up.
For The Conversation, I'm Joshua Bolden.
And I'm Jasmine Van.